Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and this is episode 264, where we're going to be talking about indie game marketing, a guide on standing out. All right, now some quick context here. On the website, my website, there's a guide that I put together that is this, and I thought it would be really helpful and a kind of a way to do things a little bit differently to create an audio version of that guide here for the show. Now, so this is something really cool that you can go back and reference to on the website, but more importantly, I just wanted to put it into a format here that's going to be really helpful for you. And just some key points that I'm going to point out here, more than anything, it's a very thorough, big guide that I decided to kind of outline the whole breadth of indie game marketing. There's definitely some important tidbits there that you're going to get a lot of valuable information on. For some people, it's going to be a little bit of a review. For others, it might be a lot of new things that you're not familiar with. But regardless of where you are in your journey and working towards on your indie game marketing, part of the things that I wanted to do with this guide in particular was just to provide a different approach and way to look at things. And that's kind of the component in terms of what I'm referring to when I say a guide on standing out. So take what you will out of this. There's a lot of value packed in here. Again, this is a bit of a departure from the typical episodes you may be used to. Don't worry, we're still going to be doing those. But this one, I just wanted to try something different and still provide you with a lot of value and a compact, thorough guide that should give you everything you need for your indie game marketing, whether it's a bit for reference or something new that you're looking to try. So take what you will from this. I hope you get a lot, and that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, and thank you for listening to the version of this guide in audio form, which is Indie Game Marketing, a guide on standing out. Indie game marketing is a lot of work. Every day, the market becomes more and more competitive as a barrier to entry is lowered. The video game industry continues to grow and is expected to be worth over $256 billion by 2025. That's only 3 years away from today. With such staggering growth, you need to make a great game stand out and know how to market your game. However, it can be a challenge to know how to market your game or where to start. That's why this guide was created. Now, the goal of this guide is to provide tried and trusted indie game marketing strategies that deliver results, regardless of whether you're making a game on PC, console, or mobile. So, I highly advise you to check out this guide, which is located at rengenmarketing.com, and on the top, the drop-down menu, you can select guides, and it will be the first guide on the list. So if you want to bounce around and give or reference some of these topics we're discussing today, by all means, visit rengenmarketing.com, select the guide, and go to the section that you want. Otherwise, let's dig in. So what is indie game marketing, right? We all know what indie game marketing is, but my interpretation of it is basically a form of marketing where a majority of independent game developers have little to no budget to market their game. In most cases, they leverage more organic, grassroots efforts or guerrilla marketing that focuses on high-impact, low-effort strategies. So I think this is an important part to mention here too, and it's simply to identify why do indie games fail. And I'm not trying to cause any despair here, but let's face it, it's important to know these things. And there's lots of reasons why indie games fail, but here are several reasons that are fairly common. The scope is too broad or ambitious. The game took too long to complete. Not having a clear vision of the project. Not fulfilling current market demand. The team wasn't a good fit for the project. Technical issues. Limited or no exposure. Not creating a commercially viable product. Or not allocating enough resources. Just from the reasons above, there's already a lot stacked against indie games. But if you want to increase your chances of success, then understanding these concepts and how to avoid marketing mistakes other games made will steer you in the right direction. So, why don't we talk about what are some common indie game marketing mistakes? So, oftentimes avoiding common mistakes can make all the difference in starting out on the right foot. Here are some that I figured I'd share with you that are one of the biggest reasons that you should avoid them. 1, not writing a marketing plan. Creating a marketing plan provides you with a framework to determine your purpose, goals, strategies, and how to measure results. It also contains market and audience research you conducted, providing valuable information and insight that will aid in your marketing strategy. Too often, indie games forgo this essential step, missing out on having clarity and confidence in their marketing and business decisions. Number 2, not allocating enough marketing resources. One of the largest problems most developers face is they focus too much time, effort, and money on development. It's not to say development isn't important, but not properly allocating resources into marketing will drastically limit your reaching goals. What the right balance between budget and time is different for everyone. I would suggest devoting up to 50% of your time and resources to marketing is highly suggested. However, I know that that's not always the case, and it's okay. But the closer you are to that, then the greater your chances are at accomplishing your goals. So remember, determine what your right balance is and do the best you can to hit that goal. Are you going to hit it? There's a probably, if you're starting out, a good chance you won't, but don't fret. Just do what's right for you. Number 3, not knowing your audience. One of the main challenges every indie dev faces is not knowing their audience. Just knowing the demographic data in games that interest players is just not enough. If you only knew how old someone was and then they liked your favorite game, would you ask them out on a date? Probably not. And there lies the point. So learning where players hang out allows you to connect with them. This creates the opportunity to stand out compared to other games. Number 4, not taking action with intent. It may sound like a pitfall, but the truth is most people don't take action with intent. See, there's a big difference between being busy and taking action. Being busy makes people feel accomplished. However, when action is combined with intent, that's how you get results. Indie dev marketing their game without intent or fully understanding of how their efforts contribute to their goals fall into this busy category. This is probably the biggest pitfall because most people don't realize this is happening until it's too late. So, here's an important question that a lot of people probably have is, when is the best time to start marketing your game? Well, it was yesterday. So, the next best time to market your game is now. Honestly, lots of people wait too long to market their game. Regardless of the reasons, marketing your game now creates awareness and opportunities you otherwise wouldn't have. That doesn't mean everything needs to happen all at once either. In fact, starting with a strong foundation and direction is the best place to begin if you haven't yet. So how do you start? Well, as you can imagine, there's tons of steps to marketing your indie game. However, it doesn't start with sharing your game on social media. If you want your marketing to be impactful and efficient, you need to start with a foundational marketing first. Foundational marketing is basically the research and implementation of key elements that will help dictate how to market your game. Here's a quick breakdown of how to begin marketing your game. Create a game that has market demand. Write an indie game marketing plan. Know as much as you can about your game's market. Know as much as you can about your game's audience. Create clear marketing messaging and build a funnel or journey for players. All right, I'm going to break these down a little bit further to provide some additional context here. So number 1, create a game that has market demand. If you want your marketing strategies to have an impact for your game, then you need to create a game that people want. The hard truth is, with any market, there's supply and demand. Games in general are in high demand. However, not all game genres are. Making sure that your game type is in high demand and has limited support puts you in a better position to succeed. Looking at the average earnings of games genres is also important to review and can give you insight to the market demand. If you don't have a good idea of where your game stands in the market, you need to find out. Now, if you're well in development and then discover your game has little demand in the market, don't worry. You want to stay committed and finish your game as soon as possible without exhausting too many resources. Just be aware of the potential risks. if you decide to market it. What you don't want to have happen is becoming another indie game marketing post-mortem on Reddit that can't figure out why their game failed. Obviously, there's lots of different reasons why these post-mortems are made, but it seems all too common that a big part of it is simply they weren't meeting the market demand. Number 2, write an indie game marketing plan. Yep, we mentioned this earlier, and again, we identified how this is a mistake. But not having this makes things very challenging. And here's one way to think about it. Think of it as taking a huge road trip to a destination without a map or plan. Yeah, you can definitely do it, but it can make the trip a lot more difficult. Your marketing plan is basically a complete travel plan for your game's marketing journey. Here's a list of some of the major areas you should be addressing in your marketing plan. Purpose and intent. It provides you with focus. Marketing goals. Gives you a destination. Market and audience research. A complete understanding of your market and audiences gives you confidence. Messaging. This helps you determine how to communicate your game to others. Content and media assets. A plan and process for creating marketing content. Funnel development and implementation. An outline of how you create awareness and how it contributes to your goals. Marketing strategies. Channels and platforms to be used to help drive traffic through your funnel. Campaign measurement. The process and metrics used to make sure marketing strategies are effective. And marketing timetable and budgets. A breakdown of events, resources, and budgets. As you define each of these sections, you'll understand everything you need to know about your marketing efforts. Even if you don't know something, that should also be identified in the plan too. If this seems like a lot, you can download the free indie game marketing plan template to help you out. Again, visit rengenmarketing.com. If you scroll down slightly, you should see a link to submit the form, and you can get that delivered to your inbox. Number 3, know as much as you can about your game's market. Just because you may be an expert in the game genre that your game is in, doesn't necessarily mean you know everything about the market. Knowing as much as you can about your game's genre and market can put you in a better position than most. Start by looking at all the popular and best-selling games within a genre. Then check out the games that seem to do poorly. What can be really helpful is doing a cross-analysis or comparison grid of these games. Find features, images, mechanics, anything that stood out to you or didn't. Then take that list and see how you can differentiate yourself from others. That's one of the best ways to stand out in your market. Here are some other indie game research tips to help you know more about your game. Play other games in your genre. Read player reviews from other games to identify the pain points or what resonates with those reviewers. Ask questions about popular games in online communities about what can be improved. Ask other devs making similar games to share some of the player feedback they received. The more research you do, the more confident you'll be in implementing certain features or messaging choices that resonate with players. Number 4, know as much as you can about your game's audience. This may be the most challenging for developers. How do you know your audience if you don't really know them? You may not know them personally, but there are lots of ways to get to know your audience. A great place to learn more about your audience is in online communities. One way to determine this is if there is a group or community dedicated to a game genre or popular title. For example, Reddit is a perfect environment to learn more about your audience just by viewing their posts and comments in game-related subreddits. You can even explore more and see other communities Reddit users post or comment on. This will review other interests they have. And from there, you can start learning things like how they communicate with others, what they are passionate about, what they dislike, what other interests they have, and how those interests may relate to your game. From all of this information, you can start building player personas or types. Creating a player persona gives you the advantage of being more direct and focused on targeting ideal players for your game. The more you know, the more opportunities you'll have to stand out. Number 5, create clear marketing messaging. Making sure your marketing messaging is clear and concise is extremely important. This applies to both text, images, and videos, basically all your media that you're using to promote with. However, it can still be easy to convey the wrong message about your game if you're not careful. Being so close to your project, it's easy to forget your audience knows nothing about your game. You'll have full context about the content you share. However, your audience won't. So for example, let's say you share an image that doesn't look very easy to make out with, what's happening in it. You'll know what's happening, but your audience may not. Or let's say you describe your game in a way that someone not familiar with it may think it's a completely different type of game. You can address this by putting yourself in the shoes of someone who hasn't seen your game before. It's a great exercise to practice regularly, as it will help you develop empathy for your audience. Once you get a direction with your messaging, you can test it on others. There are plenty of developer communities that can provide helpful feedback before you put it out into the world. It's a great way to start testing the waters, but before you start sharing content, let's discuss how to build a game marketing funnel. So when you build a funnel, you're basically creating a journey for fans and players. Funnels can be fairly easy to create, but can also be very intricate. However, they don't have to be very detailed to be effective. Lots of times, players may not even know that they entered your funnel. But regardless, it's your job to know how they entered it and what actions they are likely to take. In addition to having players take actions, funnels are also means to create an experience for players that aligns with your game. Let's take a deeper dive in understanding exactly what a game marketing funnel is. So, your marketing funnel directs players down a path where you want them to take specific action. However, marketing funnels can come in all different shapes and sizes. In most cases, you'll create awareness that will drive traffic to a specific destination. When players take action, they'll either continue to move further down the funnel or convert. So I'm just quickly going to label some of the stages of these funnels. And the awareness is kind of like your broad, big net, and then further down the funnel is where you kind of like bottle everything, if you will. So top level is awareness. Then you have consideration, conversion, loyalty, and then at the very bottom here, advocacy. And typically at the very bottom too, you have, where people make a purchase as well. Now, here are some examples of indie game marketing funnels. So just to give you a clearer sense of what exactly a funnel is. So let's say you make a social media post, they go to your website or a landing page, and they sign up for your email list. Then they hop into your Discord, and now they're playtesting the game, and then they make a purchase later. Another, influencer coverage. From that, the viewer goes to the Steam page, and they decide to follow your game. And then because on your Steam page they also you make an update from them following you to go to your Discord, then they playtest, and then eventually purchase. Or you have an ad campaign, and it directs people to go to the mobile landing page, and then there they install the app. Or let's say you have another ad campaign, but it directs people to a pre-launch page sign up that you may have for, let's say, if you're going to be running a Kickstarter campaign. And then once they receive that notification, they visit your crowdfund page, and then they go ahead and pledge. And last but not least, they're just simply browsing Steam. They wishlist the game, and eventually they purchase when you release. This can give you a good sense of the different paths that marketing funnels will create. Some are short and long, others may overlap. What's important, though, is each step of the funnel requires a clear call to action. This tells people what you want them to do, and it's how you drive them further into your funnel. Without a clear call to action, your funnel may still work, but won't be effective in delivering results. So earlier we talked about, what the player journey is like and everything, and I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit further. So basically the player's journey is part of your funnel, but it takes it to a more immersive level. Basically, it's creating a thematic experience for players which helps align their expectations with the gameplay experience. Now, let's break this concept down a little further. Say your game's main theme is relatable with a lot of people, and you have other game elements that resonate with them too. You should try your best to incorporate your game's theme and elements in your marketing materials and messaging. Elements can consist of many different things, such as inspiration, emotions, or feelings that your audience can relate to. So what is an example of this? So as you find creative ways to do this, your content will be better at connecting and resonating with your audience. This is basically called experiential marketing, and it will take time to get great at. But understanding and having empathy for your audience and players will only help you get better at this. Adding this level of immersion to your marketing funnel can be difficult to do. However, it will greatly impact how you stand out compared to other games. Now that we covered a lot on the foundational elements of your marketing strategy, let's get more into the core elements your marketing will be focused around: your content. All right, so here we're going to talk about content that you create that should be shareable. So everything you do with your marketing relies on your content and media assets. That's why you need to make your content as good as possible. To do this, your media assets need to have strong visual context. So visual context basically means showcasing media content with clear visual information that can be interpreted without additional messaging. This makes things much easier to understand for people who have never seen your game before. Below are different media assets this applies to and what may happen if visual context isn't applied to them. So common one we all know, screenshots. Mostly gameplay images should be very clear and a good representation. I would say, honestly, the best representation of your gameplay. Poor captures can cause confusion or make your game look boring or just simply cause friction. Promotional art. This consists of channel or storefront banners, capsule art, and other branding assets. You just want to make sure that these align and convey what the game experience is like. So if you make something completely different than what the game experience may look, feel, whatever, then again, you're creating fiction. Video, GIF clips, things like that. Similar to screenshots, just make sure it's clear to people on what's happening during the gameplay. Again, like we mentioned before, if you have a full idea and have full context of what that is, just put yourself in the shoes of someone else who might not. Trailers. Trailers are more effective at telling story than individual clips or images. It's more important to use clips that support the visual context so your trailer can better show and not tell. Show and not tell, very interesting concept. Not going into it here, but there's lots of stuff about it. I highly recommend you checking that out. So as you create your assets, keep them organized with helpful naming conventions too. So using categories like characters, levels, actions, etc. allows the media to be easily identified without viewing them, saving time. I added this one in there because for me personally, when I work with clients, it can just kill a lot of time trying to go through assets and trying to figure out what exactly they are, what's happening in them. Because again, that visual context can provide me the right insight to determine, okay, I'm sorry, not visual context, but that understanding of what exactly is happening in the image just by reading it makes it easier for me to decide, and anybody who's in this position to decide what type of content you want to share, especially if you know a particular type of content does really well and you're testing things out, then you can identify that easier. Again, it just saves a ton of time. And it's no different than how you would name your conventions for assets in your game development. So how to create game marketing assets. So a lot of us already have a pretty clear understanding. And again, I highly recommend you going to this guide to get more. So basically, I have a quick breakdown on how to create screenshots, how to create promotional art, how to create video GIF clips, and how to create trailers. There's a lot of cool links in here to in-game screenshot tools, even screenshot tools for mobile. Video capture tools, suggestions for free editing software such as DaVinci Resolve, and other like little tips and suggestions that I've made. So again, check it out to really find out how to make those assets. Quick overview. A lot of you might be familiar with it. Still worth checking it out. All right. Now, how do you create shareable media assets? So part of making an indie game is making sure that your media assets is making sure that they're, they get people excited and they want to share them. But that's only half the battle, right? Making media assets shareable also means making them easily accessible. So here are some ways you can do this. 1, create a press kit. We know a lot of this and how the importance of making a press kit, but there's a few more details I'm going to go down to and explaining why. So one, having these assets in specific areas or folders in the following categories can be super helpful. Pretty straightforward. Art, logos, screenshots, video GIFs, and trailers. Basically what I mentioned before. Here's a kicker though. You want to make sure you have different sizes of high-res images of all landscape, characters, wallpapers. Same thing for your logos. Same things with your screenshots. Again, best shots of gameplay, key moments, visual context like we mentioned. And then make sure your videos too are like just easily accessible, whether they're files and or links on like content you may have put on YouTube. Same thing with your trailers. All the video kind of falls in that bucket. But what's important to remember in all of this is some media assets in your press kit can be more helpful to some people than others. For example, YouTuber Splattercat stated in an interview with Simon Carlos for his newsletter was press kits providing materials to create that press kits that provide materials to create thumbnails is absolutely essential. So here's a quote from Splattercat himself. Have a banger press kit with all the materials needed for making thumbnails. HD wallpapers, key art, logos, the whole deal, kind of what we already outlined. And he explains the importance of this further. Thumbnails are incredibly underrated, but 90% of making videos stick is having a rad piece of art to show off. It can mean the difference between 15,000 views and the algorithm picking it up due to high click-through and pushing it out to hundreds of thousands. It really is that impactful. So, tailoring your press kit to best serve the intended audience. That could be the press, that could be influencers. Whoever your press kit can go to, make sure it's easily accessible for everyone, okay? So again, I can't emphasize that enough. Make sure your press kit is best served to the intended audience. And it will not only have an impact on your context exposure, but will help increase its shareability too. All right, here's some other ideas how to kind of like 10x, like just maximize your content marketing strategy. So if you really want your content to stand out, impact others, and be more shareable, then you're going to want to follow these steps. All right. 1, conduct competitive research. Like we mentioned before, it's good to see what other people are sharing, what works, what doesn't. Twitter, Reddit, find out what goes viral. 2, have your media assets tell a story. Even though your trailer is better at telling stories, a GIF or screenshot can still tell a story with little context. Being creative with your approach can turn an image into a story that resonates with your audience. 3, learn more about your audience. We talked about this before, but you know the importance of your audience. So by learning more about their interests, values, opinions, etc., you can create content that appeals and stands out to them. Let your media communicate to them in ways that other games don't. Number 4, get your community involved. Once you have a community, create engagement activities that promote user-generated content and share it. This establishes trust with other prospective fans because it's like an indirect referral from a player. When you share user-generated content, take the extra step because other potential fans will notice how you take action to show you care and appreciate your fans. That's like the kicker in all of it, right? So, important. 5, inspire others. If your game story or theme is something that can resonate with players, why not use that to inspire others? Showcasing this type of content can be very impactful and show how authentic you can be. When people are inspired by something, they typically like to share it too. All right, and then create something that's easily relatable. People share experiences all the time. Traffic, long lines, computers crashing. Why not share some of those experiences by communicating them through your content? There's a lot of different creative ways you can do this. There is a very simple example image of a tweet Sega made in there, but again, there's tons of different things you can come up with and have fun with it. 7, use sharing buttons. If part of your game marketing strategy is driving traffic to your website, it may be worth considering using share buttons on your site. Make it easy for your visitors to share your content with a click of a button. I'm going to grab a quick drink of water here because now we're getting into a really cool part of this guide, which is what are the best indie game marketing strategies. Okay, we know that there's a lot. We know you're all probably looking for the best. And what I don't believe is, I referenced this briefly, but I reached out to a lot of different people in the industry, whether they're publishers, other indie devs, small indie devs, large indie devs, other indie marketers, veterans. I reached out to everybody and just made a huge list. And these are the top 3 that came out among all these people. Some of them you definitely have heard of. Some of them you may not have heard of. But either way, I asked as many people as I could, and this is what I came out with. Share your indie game on social media, use game influencers, and showcase at video game events. So you take those main 3. Those are the main 3, but we're going to break it down. Don't worry. And you combine it with your foundational and experiential marketing. Like, these strategies will be very effective and compound your results. All right, so let's dig into it a little bit more. So, sharing your game on social media. So now you know the importance of making your content amazing and shareable. We're going to discuss how and where you can share it. So here's an interesting fact. There are over 3.78 billion social media users, which means there's a lot of different social media channels to choose from. However, depending on what your goals are and basically some channels deliver results better than others. So whatever platform you start using, it's highly recommended you start using one first. Learn everything you possibly can about it, and then do your best to become an expert at it. This is going to give you more confidence and the ability to create awareness. When you're ready to move to another platform, repeat the process. You'll be able to carry over what you learned from the new from the existing platform to the new one with greater results in less time. Now, there's a reason why I mention this, because I think what generally happens with people is they see a lot of activity happening on different platforms, and then they're like, oh, I want to use that one. I want to use that one. Oh, I heard a great success story on that. That's what we're going to do. Well, there's a lot of barriers to that, because sometimes you may not be comfortable with that and stuff. And I'll disagree. And sometimes where, yeah, it's worth getting out of your comfort zone. But again, if you spread yourself too thin, this is the point I'm making. If you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to make anything happen. And if you only dabble in it a little bit, you're not going to be effective with it. That's why I share this point, and why it's important to know everything you possibly can about it and do your best to become an expert. Because like I said, you can carry that over. Now, here are some of the channels that a lot of people have recommended being the best for them. Promoting your game on Reddit. Believe it or not, the main Reddit user demographic is near the same for indie games. So the main people you're targeting is basically everyone that hangs out on Reddit, is what I'm saying. It also has an extensive growing number of game-related subreddits too, making Reddit a great place to engage with players and create awareness. So even though, real quick, I provide a really interesting graph on there to showcase this, what the demographic numbers are. Now, even though not all subreddits allow promotion, Reddit provides indie games great opportunities to connect with players and learn valuable information from them. So if you plan on promoting your game on Reddit, you kind of want to follow these steps. Create an account, join some subreddits that relate and indirectly relate to your game. Learn about the promotional rules in each community you join, participate in your targeted subreddits, and learn what type of content goes viral, and test and experiment promo posts on platforms like Twitter first to see how they do. So for the last one, the reason why I mentioned that is Reddit has a 1 out of 10 promotional post site-wide rule. Basically, for every 10 posts you make, only one of them can be a promo post, is what I like to call it. This means, yeah, so I explained that. And you want to do your best to abide by this rule. Some communities are a little bit more lax than that, and it's up to you to decide if you want to kind of exploit that or I shouldn't say exploit that, but be a little bit more aggressive, I should say. Others are more allow you to promo post regularly with some certain guidelines. But still, you want to test your stuff to make sure it's work, because it is time and effort that you're putting into this. All right. Another good strategy: market your game on TikTok. All right. It's got the potential to create a lot of exposure. However, be mindful that it consists of a younger user demographic. As long as that aligns with your game's audience, TikTok can be a great opportunity. With the user base growing extensively and content having the potential to reach hundreds of thousands of people, this is one of the reasons why TikTok is such a great community to leverage. And I use an example here with Studio Stray Font, their account. They have only recently been super active for the last few months and have had at least one post over 200,000 views and a few others over tens of thousands. And there's an image there so you can see exactly which post did well. So creating content relies heavily on videos. Generally speaking, better performing content involves having someone in the content paired with popular or catchy music. If you want to market your game on TikTok, here's some basic steps. Kind of similar to last: create an account, browse via computer or app, become familiar with the platform, search or follow other game, non-game creators using keywords and hashtags. Get ideas on how to approach your own videos and regularly test and experiment. Like most platforms, using TikTok is an iterative process. However, with time and dedication, the chances of your content going viral will increase with each post. All right, build your indie game network on Twitter. Yes, there's a reason I emphasize network, and hear me out. Now, with nearly 39% of its user demographic being between ages 25 and 35, it would seem like the ideal social media channel to market your game. But there's a catch. Your main audience typically isn't using Twitter to engage with you or indie games. It's because most people use Twitter for news or follow influencers. Link to statistics relating to this, FYI. But in addition to this, it seems Twitter doesn't like posts with links in them and throttles down their reach. Why do they do this? It's because they want people to stay longer on the platform. They don't want them to jump off. So why consider Twitter then, right? These are some pretty big cons here. Now, remember how I just mentioned people use Twitter for news and following influencers? Well, gaming press and gaming influencers are probably the main reason why gamers or players are on Twitter in the first place. Not only that, but publishers are also on Twitter because they know indie devs are actively use Twitter. So between gaming journalists, influencers, publishers, and even other devs, Twitter is a great place for you to reach and connect with some pretty helpful people. Twitter may not get you directly in front of players, but it can put you in a great position for other opportunities. So, if you want to build your indie game network on Twitter to better leverage your indie game marketing, then follow these basic steps to get started. If you haven't already, create an account. Browse and become familiar with the platform. Search and follow game journalists, influencers, publishers, and some devs. What I'll mention about some devs: hey, it's friendly, it's nice to follow other devs that follow you and everything else. But here's a key thing that I would like you to do if you're following other devs. Follow other devs that you want to connect with where they're in a position you want to be. For example, Supergiant Games. I would follow them. I would follow any the main developers on that team, right? Or even if there's that, let's call that a reach, right? Not necessarily reach. It's probably easy to connect with them, but maybe they're not as accessible. Or maybe there's just a fairly small or medium-sized studio that's doing really well, that's sustainable and everything. Follow them. See what they're doing. If you just follow everybody else that's like you're not going to learn anything from them. When it comes to Twitter, that's one of the best things I think you can do. There's lots of other things too, but that's one of the best ones. So that's that one caveat when you follow. That's why I say some game devs. Don't follow everybody else like you, unless they're really, there's other reasons that you justify to, fine. But honestly, follow other game devs that are in positions where you want to be. All right. Another thing, be selective with who you follow, kind of to my last point, and engage with them regularly to stand out. For example, game journalists, influencers, if you engage with them regular, comment on their stuff, and it's not to say you have to do it like every day, but if you do that, you're going to stand out. So when it comes time to, talk to them later, you're in a good position. Participate in weekly events like Screenshot Saturday and others. Test other social media posts on Twitter first and see how they perform. Like I mentioned earlier with Reddit. Pin and tweet your feed that has a call to action link. So what I mean by that is, remember how you say you lose traction if you post a link, if you make a tweet that has a link to it, right? Because they want to keep people on the platform. Well, you can still make those posts, but then if it's really important to you, if it's like a call to action that has it, pin it. Because if people are checking you out based off of how you engage with them and everything else, they're probably going to check out your feed. And if they check your feed, you want that main call to action tweet pinned at the top of your thing. A lot of people don't do that. Do it. Include any additional important links in your profile and or keep DMs open. Hey, look, if you want people to click around at certain stuff or you want people to connect and network with you, you got to keep the DMs open. All right. Create awareness with Imager. Now, like Reddit, Imager has also a similar audience and characteristics, making it an ideal place to post and create some impactful awareness. Despite its similarities to Reddit, like any platform, it has its own nuances that you need to be aware of if using it to create awareness for your game. First thing is to be aware of is that if you're new to Imager, you have to go through a validation period. What this means is your posts will be limited in providing a call to action with links in them. They do this because they want users to add value to the platform and limit the number of spammers on it. So be sure to engage on the platform with posts first. Also, know that a lot of people use Imager for sharing memes. This can make it a challenge to strike the right approach with your posts. However, it's still important to be mindful of that. Remember, you want to cater to your audience and how they use the platform. So this concept can be a little challenging to understand, and not even going into the more technical intricacies of the algorithms and stuff, right? Sometimes I think you can get caught up in that, and that's why I want you to focus on this stuff more than anything. But still, this concept, it can be challenged to understand. However, there is an Imager user, Randwerk. Again, go to the article. I have the link there in an image. But his username is RANDWERK. Well, they show how quickly they created some awareness over the course of several posts, right? And these things, you'll look at them and be like, wow, this is fairly simple, right? But it's not simple because, again, it goes into the concept of understanding who your audience is and everything. So there's a little bit of work there, and there was some trial and error that they made, and you'll see that in the image. It's also important to note that all the content that he shared, Randwerk shared, posted, used either a video or a GIF. So important thing to make note of there. There are also lots of other styles of posts you can make on Imager too. So there's lots of different options you have. The point is, as long as you are catering to the audience and optimizing how you post, you should have a good shot garnering some attention on Imager. Now, thinking about leveraging Imager, then again, here's some quick steps. Create an account, browse, search and engage with posts by searching for related keywords and tags. Get an idea how to approach your own videos from that search and engage aspect, and regular test and experiment. Again, goes without saying that using Imager is also an iterative process. So just keep on testing, and you're bound to find something that will stick. All right. We're now into another major section of this, which is using game influencers. So again, out of the top 3 that came up, this is number 2. So the main reason why so many game developers rely on game influencers is that they know and understand that the influencers have an established a strong devoted community. This can have a significant impact for indie game developers and why leveraging game influencer marketing is so important. So let's discuss some of the best ways to leverage game influencers. So here's one that I think comes up because a lot of people are like, hey, let's go to streamers or content creators, or really what's the difference between the two? Aren't they the same? Well, here's the deal. Most game influencers are either streamers or content creators, though there's definitely an overlap. Streamers mostly stream the game they're playing, or content creators may stream the game but also create gameplay content that people can view later. If trying to decide between reaching out to streamers or content creators, you may want to stick with content creators first. While both content creators and streamers can have large followings and generate some great awareness for your game, content creators typically get more views. Why? Because the content gets more views over time compared to streaming gameplay. Unless a streamer has multiple play sessions of your game and or uploads the gameplay to be viewed later, your game's long-term exposure is reduced. That's why being mindful of the platform and how it's used is very important. And in this case, it's being mindful of how this particular influencer uses their platform is important to keep in mind. So, what are the best ways to find influencers? Because, hey, this is a big deal, right? Well, first and foremost, finding game influencers that are a good fit for your game can definitely be a process, right? But there are generally two paths you can go to find game influencers, though. Using services or doing the work manually. In either case, having the right approach, information, and making sure the influencer has access to play your game are the main requirements when reaching out to them. So, game influencer services. The influencer services can be hiring someone who can find and reach out to influencers for you, using influencer platforms. You manage and simplify the process by paying fees. Here's a list of game influencer platforms most indie games have good results with. We got LurkKit, IndieBoost, Keymailer, Catapult, Woovit, AdShot, Xsola. All good things to consider. I would, do the work, find out if you're considering this, do the work and find out which model, because each of them are similar but might have different models, different offerings, whatever. Go in and do your homework to find out which is going to be the best for you. Now, manually finding game influencers. Now, when you're manually looking for game influencers, there are a lot, there are a few ways to go about this process. One, you can use Twitch or YouTube directly and apply filters to refine your search. While this method can help you find relative influencers, it can be tedious, especially if you're looking for influencers with a certain number of followers and views. To make this process easier, these tools are often used by many other devs to reduce the amount of work involved. LurkKit, mentioned that earlier, so they also have a service in that respect, but also a means to finding content. Sully Gnome, I believe that's primarily for Twitch. Twitch Tracker, pretty straightforward there, and Social Blade, which I think offers a lot on social platforms, but YouTube is another one that they can provide some stats. So when using these tools, you generally want to go after influencers that have a good size, but not huge, and a loyal following. Going too big starting out will likely get you little return for your efforts. So you still want your efforts to have impact on your results, so don't go too small either. If you find you're not getting any responses, then try focusing on smaller influencers with loyal followings. This is a great way to start building some traction. You may also want to review and optimize your approach too. And again, your press kit, if it really caters to people that you're reaching out to because of those points that Splattercat made, that could be another reason. I mean, the main one is probably going to be, your game and is it a right fit and those types of things, but your press kit can help on that front too. Now, as you look for influencers, part of your process should require you to find out more about their channel. Are they a variety streamer? Do they only play specific game genres? Do they only play indie games? Some influencers may be exclusive to mobile, PC, or AAA games. Regardless of what they cover, make sure you know. You don't want to waste their time or yours. So what are some good strategies to approach these influencers? Well, when approaching the influencers, you really want to stand out, be concise, and provide helpful information they can use to easily review your game. It's also a huge help if you put together a template to make the process easier. But before you start blasting influencers with a templated email, here are some great strategies that will help you stand out compared to everyone else. So how do you stand out? By connecting with these influencers. Do you take notice? I'm going to open this with the question. Do you take notice when someone follows your game or gives you a compliment? Yeah, of course you do. The same goes for influencers. And honestly, the same goes for any human being, really. So good concept to remember here, take away with. Most people, or in this case, we're talking about influencers, are grateful and notice when they receive engagement or new follower. So if they always notice these things, there's a strong probability that if you engage with them regularly, they'll notice you. These types of actions show you care about their content and can establish a relationship. By connecting with influencers this way, you create the opportunity to stand out to them. So when it comes time to reach out to them and cover your game, you already have the advantage over everyone else. It's not to guarantee that they're going to cover your game or anything else like that, because there's any number of reasons why that may or may not happen, but it puts you in a better position. Be short and sweet. Influencers are super busy. Between emails, direct messages, and content they're creating, they don't have the time to read a long pitch about your game. So I created a quick outline you can follow when you're crafting your next influencer outreach campaign. So create a straightforward and catchy subject line. A brief introduction, maybe about a sentence. Personalize this. Okay, this is a key part because, I mentioned templates, right? But you still want to personalize it. Something that resonates with them. One sentence. Or you can give them a compliment or call out to something in their channel. I don't know what it is, but just find something to personalize it, because that shows that you actually care. You're not just saying, hey, cover my game. And a game description. Make it a sentence or two. It doesn't have to be long. Getting to the point with a brief introduction and a log line or short compelling description of your game is typically the best approach. It's also okay, like I said, to personalize your email a little too, but keep it short. The extra effort can make a lasting impression and helps you stand out more. Make it easy. In addition to keeping your message concise, you also want to make it super easy for influencers to get all the information they need. Here's how you can do that. Have a call to action. What do you want them to do? It may seem obvious because you're reaching out to them, but still, make it clear. What do you want them to do? A great screenshot or two. It will give them a clear idea of what your game is like pretty quickly. And links, Steam page, landing page, and a press kit, definitely provide those there. Don't make them search for it. It's so annoying. It kills their time, and they're more likely to just pass on you immediately and go to the next person. You don't want that to happen. Having these three main things make it easy for influencers to consider you. So if you make it a challenge for them, if you create friction, notice kind of an ongoing theme here with whenever I use the word friction, they likely will move on to the next request. So here are some other important questions, like, do I need a budget for gaming influencers? The short answer is no, you don't need one. However, it really depends on a lot of factors and how you want to tackle your influencer campaign. And from a lot of other people I spoke that have used influencers, they actually highly suggest that you have some type of a budget for influencers too, because there's a lot of other things that you can get out of it. So like in most cases, for example, having a budget for influencers can go a long way in producing results. Influencer services can add up, especially when trying to get as much reach as possible. And some influencers with a large reach may be worth the money. But here's the thing that I think that was most important of people who mentioned of allocating some type of a budget for their influencers was that paying for game influencers can often lock in coverage. So it prioritizes your content over others. And this can be very helpful if you're releasing your game or you have other campaigns that you may have running to amplify the results of those campaigns and running in conjunction with each other. So again, not just from an impact in terms of results perspective, but a timing one. And the timing that can be paired with other campaigns or things going on can really help amplify those results. So that's where the budget can be really helpful and beneficial. Now, some people spend as little as a few $100s, whereas others can spend thousands. So regardless of what you decide to spend or not, just make sure you determine what's going to be the best use of your resources. Reaching out yourself saves money, but spending the money can save you valuable time and deliver impactful results. Sorry for the pause. Showcasing at video games events is next. So, of the top 3, this is number 3. So, best ways to market your indie game, and video game events is it. So, these are actually probably one of the most impactful ways to get exposure for your game. However, it's important to consider that not all events provide the same opportunities. For example, some events may be more business focused like GDC. Others are more consumer based like PAX. Steam events are more targeted at potential buyers. Regardless of what the event is, you need to be aware of the audience they cater to, their costs, their goals, and other factors. At the end of the day, you want to make sure you're able to recoup your investment. And honestly, I know because some of these are tangible and not tangible, that mindset of looking at ways to recoup your investment is important to go throughout everything that you're doing with your marketing. But not necessarily on the recouping your investment part, but really what actions are you taking that relate to your goals, to really simplify it. And just throwing that out there real quick. But anyways, now with events, there's physical events and virtual events. So since the outbreak of COVID-19, obviously there's been a decrease in physical events, and virtual events started popping up everywhere. So while this has created a huge opportunity for developers who typically haven't been able to attend physical events, there's some other things to consider too. As physical events, having a hard time talking here, folks. Sorry. As physical events make a slow return, it's still important to consider the differences between the two and how they can contribute to your game's reach. So let's talk a little bit more about physical events. So physical events, they provide a great experience for developers. Meeting players in person and getting valuable feedback can be very motivational, especially when it's, in person. While there are lots of other benefits too, it's always important to look at the bottom line and evaluate how physical events contribute to your game's goals. When thinking about showcasing at a physical event, you'll want to consider the following costs: booth costs, rentals, travel, lodging, food expenses, promotional materials, and additional related and potentially unrelated costs. Once you have a rough idea of what these costs will be, do some research and reach out to other developers that attend physical events, or at least the ones you're interested in. It's important to find out what their goals were for attending and what kind of results they received. Now, some simple math here. Just divide your estimated costs by your estimated results, based off the research you just did. And if the cost to obtain your results are too high in comparison to other marketing efforts you're doing, it may not be worth attending the physical events. That's the best way that you can look at these things, honestly. There can be lots of beneficial factors from showcasing, at physical events that don't necessarily have a tangible value associated with them. Like, for example, such as networking and playtesting in some cases. But when you're considering these non-tangible values, just remember there may be other ways to achieve them without attending a physical event. All right, now let's talk a little bit more about virtual game events. So, we know that there's a lot more virtual events compared to a couple years ago. The virtual event landscape has made it more accessible for game devs to showcase their game, which is kind of cool. But on the flip side, virtual events lack immersion that attendees generally look forward to. But despite this, it still makes events more accessible for attendees. So while virtual events have the potential of greater reach, the exposure of your game you receives could differ greatly depending on the event. So if you're thinking about participating in virtual events, here are some questions to ask yourself. How are games or your game being featured? Being featured can help your game get a lot of exposure. Find out how this is being done to determine if the event is going to be impactful for you or not. Are there streaming events? So will the event holder showcase games, and be featured as part of a streaming party, whether they're hosted on their Twitch account or other platforms? Something to keep in mind. Is the event being featured on Steam? In addition to getting exposure from the event, if it's featured on Steam, like usually like Steam might have some type of partnership or whatever with the event holder. Or Steam may even have an event-related sale in this regard. It will give your game extra visibility on the platform. Does the event feature specific types of games? If the event caters to indie games or specific genres of games, like wholesome games, this could provide a great opportunity to stand out more. And does the event feature a specific group of developers? There are a growing number of events that feature women developers and developers of color and all sorts of forms of advocacy for different groups. It's another great way to stand out while promoting advocacy for these groups. So consider that as well too. And how has the event performed well? Has the event performed well for other developers? Again, see if it worked well for them and understand the reasons for it. They might not align with their reasons may make sense or not, but try to get the best understanding that you can and make the best decision you can in terms of on that front too. Now, what are the best gaming events to attend? So this is the silver lining here in this, right? So, it could still be a challenge to determine what best gaming events are to attend, and especially if you haven't participated in them before, because they all can provide different results based on a lot of different factors. But as I mentioned before, again, do your research before attending and find the event that best meets your goals. Now, I provided a list of gaming events that come highly recommended from teams that have showcased at them and received a great amount of exposure. Now, for some of these, they might be out of reach for you. Others, not so much. Either way, look into them, see what's a good fit. And here they are. Steam events and Next festivals. Pretty obvious on that front, right? But Future Game Show, Indie Live Expo, Day of the Devs, Guerrilla Collective, PC Gaming Show, that's like E3, Indie Showcase and Rising, that's PAX, Tokyo Game Show, The Mix, IGF, Indie Game Festival, that's GDC, Indie Arena Booth, that's Gamescom, and DreamHack Beyond. Outside these events being great, they're so impactful because they usually I say, get a Steam featuring on the front page. So if there's one key thing that you're trying to nail down when considering an event, I would look at it with the lens of a Steam featuring. Because this definitely helps get extra visibility to your Steam page. And usually the end result is getting results for your Steam page, right? Wish lists, followers, etc., sales. While somewhat related, there has been an increase of theme sale events on Steam, and at times those are featured as well. So again, like I mentioned before, it's starting, more of these things are coming up where Steam is featuring sales based off of games that are attending events. But in either case, whatever event you consider showcasing at, be aware that each event has different requirements. So understanding these requirements in advance is essential, especially if you're looking for opportunities to get featured. And I provide a video real quick of how, again, I mentioned Stray Fawn. They have a game called The Wandering Village. They were at the PC Gaming Show, and they had an opportunity to be featured, which they created an exclusive trailer for, and this is E3, that opportunity to create basically exclusive video for this. And what's was really fun about this one too is they had to do it totally last minute, I think, because of just the time frame that they had to work with. So they put it together, did a great job, and they got some serious awesome featuring because of it. So again, explore those opportunities, ask questions, find out what they may be. I can't remember the exact circumstances if they were presented or they with this opportunity or they sought it, but either way, they got featured. It was a short amount of time that they put this together, and the results were amazing for them. So just food for thought in terms of one example relating to how this can be impactful and looking for different opportunities in terms of featuring with events. One last important thing to make sure is that you apply once registration opens for these things, and don't be afraid to follow up. Because if you think about it, managing events is a lot of work, and a lot of times things may fall between the cracks. We're all human, right? So if you apply right away, and then follow up with people. Don't think like you're bugging people, because again, you're going to miss out on some opportunities. And don't get frustrated, but just be active, okay? Hey everybody, I just wanted to take a quick moment and pause and take a break.
honestly, that was a lot of content that we covered, and I figured I'd give you a breather. The next section of this, because I was thinking that having this in 2 parts is going to be a lot more beneficial than trying to rewind and go back to specific areas. But again, just to call out, this is of a guide that's currently live on the site, and if you want to visit it to go to specific sections or to reference anything, you can do so by going to rengenmarketing.com, and under the navigation there, click on guides. It's the first guide listed there, and you can go ahead and go reference or review the appropriate section that you wanted to dive in a little bit more on. But for the purpose of this particular audio podcast, we're going to take a break. I'm going to actually break this up into 2 parts. The next one, Part 2, definitely won't be as long as this one. I believe it's closer to around about half as much time, so closer to 30 minutes, but still a lot to dive into in terms of the other impactful marketing strategies that a lot of industry veterans use. So we go into a little detail on each of those, but not quite to the extent that we did in this first part. So that way you can get the full picture in terms of what you may or may not want to incorporate into your marketing and what works best for you. So again, this is the end of part 1. Part 2 will be available in audio form, but if you're looking to get that information immediately and right away, then by all means check out the guide. Again, rengenmarketing.com, select the guide option in the nav, and then go into the areas or just review however you want to use the guide there. So again, thank you so much for listening. And stay tuned for part 2, where we talk about other impactful strategies you can use with your indie game marketing.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. If you enjoy and value the show's content, you can support us even more by going to Patreon and visiting www.patreon.com/IGM podcast and select the tier that best suits your needs. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.